Hey guys, my name is Bruno. Welcome to the Flooring Advisor. In today's video, we're going to show you how easy it is to install vinyl plank flooring that even I can do it. So there's a lot to talk and discuss about vinyl plank floors, but in today's video, we're going to focus specifically on installation of the most popular and DIY recommended, the click and lock vinyl plank floating flooring. So this is the most common. It's a 4-sided click with a 12mm wear layer. It comes with a padding attached. So all we have to do is prep the subfloor and go straight to the installation. So let's begin with a quick walk throughout the job site so we can have a better understanding about what we're doing here today. This is my assistant Zeus. He's gonna be bothering me along the day. And this is the area where we're going to install the new vinyl plank flooring. In this case here, we're doing an installation over a plywood subfloor that's actually pretty level. So I'm just going to sand down the edges of the plywood that are usually higher or uneven. Make sure that there's no nails or screws sticking out the plywood and give it a nice cleanup. Here I'll be using an edge sanding machine with a 16 grit sanding paper to sand down the edges of the plywood and make sure that we get all the high spots. This machine is most used for sanding wood floors, but I like to keep one around for this type of occasion. You can find one of those for rent at your local Home Depot store, and there are also a ton of other tools that you can use to obtain the same type of results. I'm also using the dust collector to help me minimize the dust while sanding the plywood. When installing any type of floors, the subfloor preparation is the key, especially when you're installing laminate floors, vinyl plank flooring, or any other type of floating floor. The subfloor is a huge factor to determine the performance and the durability of your product. So the better you prep your subfloors, the better will be your final results. Your new floors won't level or help level your existing subfloor, either concrete or plywood. It's literally just a finished layer that will follow all the imperfections of your subfloor. So to have a nice installation, we gotta make sure that we have a nice subfloor. Second step, we're going to scrape out all the leftover paint and spackle that was left on the floor, making sure that it's nice and smooth. Also make sure to run the scraper throughout the entire plywood and stay alert for screws or nails sticking out the plywood. Most of the time, if your scraper gets stuck somewhere, even that something there needs your attention. Like in this case here, we had a nail sticking out and we definitely don't want to install our new floors over that. You should also check your subfloor for squeaks and address any problem if needed. On the next step, it's time to cut the door jambs, and for that I'll show you the 3 most used methods that I know. The first one is the most used by the DIYers. Works fine, but will definitely take longer. Our second option is the multi-tool. This is a much better option, and especially in places that are hard to reach, like the inside of a tiny closet as an example. And the third one is the most used by professionals. Here are some of the advantages. You can adjust it to a specific height and lock it in place. You get a cleaner cut if you're working with a decent blade, of course. You can plug into your vacuum to help minimize the dust, and it's definitely a lot faster than the other 2 options. Next, we're going to vacuum everything really nice, carry all the material upstairs and get set for the installation. And I also brought up my miter saw to help me with the cutting when doing the floors and later to install the shoe molding. So as you guys can see, I have set out the lighting, the material and my tools on the opposite side from where I'm starting the installation. Here we have the multi-tool, a square, a rubber mallet, a tapping block, and a little broom. I also like to keep my knife, a crowbar, and a chisel close to my reach. This project has a little bit over 400 square feet, and we also have 2 landings going down the steps that we get the same type of material installed. And now it's finally time for the fun part. Here I have measured the room from wall to wall, and we only have a ½ inch difference that I'm not even going to take in consideration. So I decided just to start with the full plank by the doorway and work my way out. This way I have a full plank on the side of the room where we'll see the most, and we'll leave the final row for the other side of the room where the final cut will probably be hidden under desks and cabinets. So here, starting with my first row, you can notice that I chose to do the cut for the door jamb right in the middle of the plank, and cut another piece to complete the right side of my first row. For the second row, instead of using a smaller piece as a starter, I chose to get a full plank and just cut off a few inches, staggering the joints far apart from each other. This helps while doing the first couple of rows and will provide more stability during and after the installation. Here, I just want to show you an example of how not to lay your floors. This is called the stair step end joint. It doesn't look right, and it also doesn't give enough stability for the installation. I personally have fixed a lot of work that failed for this simple reason. The floors started to open along the sequence of the stair step pattern. Don't feel bad if you need to undo a few rows to change your pattern. Maybe because it will help you making an end cut, or maybe you just noted something you didn't like a nape joint or a shirt end cut by the wall. It's totally normal, and it takes a lot less time to undo and reinstall a few rows than would have taken measuring to predict cuts and design your pattern. Also, try not to do more than 5 rows at a time. In case if you have to undo a few of them, you won't end up having to undo half of what you have already done. So moving along with our installation, in a situation like this one over here, I recommend that you finish every row up to the point where you need to align with the other wall, and make sure that the part that you have already installed is aligned and straight. Also check if you have left the correct space for expansion and contraction. And then lay your next row along the perimeter of the wall, connecting the planks to the floors that's already installed, to make sure that it's following the same alignment. Leaving the cut for the perimeter of this wall behind so we can then measure it and cut the planks. Undo the last row and then reinstalling it, starting with the planks that we just cut. As you guys can see, this type of material is really easy to cut, and in most occasions I only use a knife and another plank as a guideline. I also want to mention that, as you guys can see, I'm not using any spacers to help me keep the gap for expansion and contraction. I don't like to use it unless I'm working with a very slippery surface like a vapor barrier plastic and other types of underlayment, or if the installation requires the use of a tapping block most of the time. In this situation here, we don't get a lot of movement with the floors, and I'm able to keep it in place while working on top of it. I see a lot of people struggling to start the first rows using the spacers in the back. When you don't really need to, you can always install a couple of rows right against the wall and then use a crowbar to pull it away and put the spacers in, or you can also start it away from the wall and then push it towards the wall once you have a few rows locked together. Now, this is a good tip if you're doing a big area, and if you have a miter saw at the job site, it'll help you save some time. I like to take one full box and lay the planks on top of my miter saw, leaving about 5 to 6 inches of space between the ends of the planks, and cut it in half. This will give us a good set of starting planks. And again, here's an example of how not to lay your floors. We definitely need to avoid the stair step and nape joints, and this is the proper way we should stagger the joints. Here at the other end, we're going to be using the leftover pieces to do the end cuts. We can do it one by one using just a knife and a square, or we can also pre-lay a few rows connecting them just on the ends, so we can mark and cut them all at the same time using the miter saw. And here are some other tips to help you out along the installation. Some materials will require that you open the box and mix the planks before starting the installation or while doing it, especially materials that comes with color variation. And that's because some of the manufacturers pack the same printing in just one box, while other manufacturers pre-mix the planks while packing their material. So open a few boxes, lay the planks on the floor, study the area where we're going to do the install, and find out what's the best way to install your floors. Some floors are easier to start it from the left to the right, while other materials are easier to start it from the right to the left. So get familiar with your product, and this may help you avoid a few problems along the install. And like everything else in life, the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. So when doing an end cut, like this one over here along the wall, the easiest way to do it is to cut the plank to size and place it on top of the last piece installed. Grab a little scrap and use it as a guide to help you mark where to cut on the plank. And after you're done making your cut, remove the last plank next to the cut that you have to install, so you can have more space to slide that piece that you just cut in place. Use a tapping block to help you out with that so you don't end up breaking the edges with your hammer. Lock the other plank back in place and continue with your installation. Here at the final roll of our installation, we're going to follow the same process by placing the plank on top of the last roll installed and dragging a little scrap piece along the perimeter of the wall, guiding the pencil to help us mark where to cut on the plank. And as I said before, you can cut this using just a knife and another plank as a guide. And for this step, you also need to have a crowbar or a pull bar to help you lock the last plank in place, especially when you have a door jamb on your way. Now I'm just going to quickly show you the installation of the two landings that I mentioned before, so we can finalize this video with the molding installation. It's my dream. I did what I dream. It's what you make it. Always try to give. Don't ever take it. I did what I dream. It's what you make it. Always try to give. Don't ever take it. I did what I dream. It's what you make it. Always try to give. Don't ever take it. I did what I dream. It's what you make it. Always try. Here at the landings, I decided to go over the existing nosing and use a metal carpet stair nosing instead of using the nosing provided by the floor manufacturer. This is a commercial office and will have a heavy traffic of people going up and down the steps. So the metal transition will definitely do a better job. And you can also note that we have sanded all the edges of the plywood, getting rid of all the high spots. We want to make sure that the planks are laid nice and flat with no movements. And since this is a floating floor installation, I suggest that you mark where you have to put the nails for the metal stair nosing and drill a bigger hole just on the vinyl floor. We want to do that just to make sure that the nails are not holding it down and it has a little space for movement. And last but not least, it's time to finalize this project with the shoe molding or quarter round installation. Here we're going to be installing a primed white pine shoe molding, and I prefer to buy 12 footers so we can use full pieces in most places, avoiding the need to make joints. For cutting the shoe molding, we have two options. First, we have this nice cutter that's very helpful in most cases, but I still like to use the miter saw for the end cuts since it gives a cleaner cut. And I'm also using 2 inches 18 gauge finish nail to install it. Here my only tip is to nail it to the wall base and make sure you're not nailing it to the floors so you're not holding the floors down. And here is our final product. It's what you make it. Always try to give. Don't ever take it. I just what I dream. It's what you make it. So if you're looking for flooring or flooring supplies, make sure to check out our website at flooringadvisor.com. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave us a comment below. And if you like this video, just smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. Until the next one. So if you're looking for flooring, thank you. So if you're looking for flooring